The traditions, over time, they've tried to update these metaphors. And they've tried to use new technology to describe the metaphors because that's how we can, as modern people, we can understand it. So about 100 years ago, there was a guy named Swami Yogananda. He came over from India. He was like one of the first Indian yogi swamis to really live in the U.S. And he wrote a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. I don't know if you ever read it.
Yes, I read it.
Oh, you read it? Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 60s, it was like the book, one of those books that everybody passed around.
Yeah.
And Steve Jobs, it was his favorite book. At his funeral, he gave everybody, or his memorial service, he gave everybody a little brown box. They went home and opened the box, and they found a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi in there. But so Yogananda came over about 100 years ago, and he tried to update this old metaphor. And what was new technology back in the 1920s? It was movies, movie projectors. He said, the world is like a movie projector, right? You're playing these parts. The actors are playing the parts on the screen, and things are happening to them. But really, the actors aren't necessarily dying. It's the characters that are suffering, within the game, within the movie itself. And so he used that metaphor as a way to try to explain this ancient religious idea that's at the core of every single religion, which is that the world as we see it is not really real, and there's a real world beyond this world. And so he updated the metaphor to use movie projectors. And if you've ever been, we've all been in movie theaters, if you look away from the screen, you can kind of see the flickering of the light, right? And you can kind of see everybody so engrossed in it that they're not looking around. They don't know what's going on other than, maybe having some popcorn or something. And so today, I think we need to update those metaphors, right? Particularly for a younger generation who spent like as much of their time in, things like Fortnite or Roblox when they were younger as avatars. If we use the metaphor of a massively multiplayer online game. And I think Yogananda, if he were alive today, in fact, my latest book, which I wrote after the simulation books, because it was the 75th anniversary of Autobiography of a Yogi a couple years ago. And HarperCollins India asked me to write this book about, what can you learn from Autobiography of a Yogi? And there's all these weird stories in there of like, some guy materializing a palace in the Himalayas out of nowhere, right? You've got levitating saints, you've got guys bilocating, disappearing, all kinds of crazy shit going on, right? And I said, well, you sure you want me to write this book? I'm an entrepreneur and and a computer scientist. They said, yeah, because we want you to use your technology metaphors like the simulation hypothesis to explain this stuff. And so if Yogananda were alive today, and I wrote this in my new book called Wisdom of a Yogi, what he would say is, it's like a movie, but we're the actors and we're also the audience, and we have a script and we're kind of playing the script, but we can change the script if we want. What does that sound like? It sounds like a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, So I think that metaphor is a great way to try to explain this idea of the soul and the body, within the religious traditions. That's the RPG version of the simulation hypothesis.